Hey folks, John with Complete Technology Solutions, your friend in the computer business. Okay guys, I'm not too big to admit that I learned something. Check it out. So guys, I know it's been a little while since my last video. I want to apologize for that. I was in Los Angeles all week last week working my regular 9 to 5. Believe it or not, I do have a day job. And then I came back and managed to get insanely sick for a few days. So hopefully I won't cough or spit or anything else on you, but I think I'm doing much better now. So the last video we did on the salt supply Tippmann Sabre, we had an issue with our Tippmann. Now I did send this back to them and they sent it back. They did service one O-ring back in the back that was leaking on pressure. However, one of the things that it was leaking worst was out of the front of the launcher. Guys, I want to show you something here. Now, this is going to be a universal thing with all three of these launchers because they use the exact same cap on this. And by the way, it was a viewer that pointed this out to me. So I want to thank you guys for keeping up on this and letting me know these things. It helps me out immensely. All right, guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull off this cap. Now, if you recall, this is the cap that when I would pull the trigger, it would just go poof and blow out all at the front, right? Well, if you look at the cap closely, guys, you have got an Allen key deep down in there. Do you see that? Now, that key is I believe, a 3/16. Yes, it is. So it's a 3/16 Allen key. What we're going to do is I'm going to unscrew this screw. Now, this is going to have like a little pointy end on it. All right, you see that little pointy end? Now, inside there, you'll see there is another Allen key, the exact same size. Now, when I lower this, you'll see that that nozzle lowers and raises in this. What this means is that all CO2 is not created equally. And we're going to get to that here in just a second. So what I had to do is adjust this up. Now, if you've got this adjusted too far, as soon as you insert this and lock it, you will puncture the CO2. So there is a sweet spot. You want to find where you want it to be, then insert your little locker and screw it down and secure it. All right, just like that. Now, in theory, if we've got our distance correct, we should be able to take one of our CO2 cartridges, and for this I'm going to use the same Valken cartridge that we used the last time that was leaking. All right, so we're going to pop it in. We're going to put in our CO2 block, and we're going to pull the trigger. You guys ready? Once again, guys, this is not a firearm. YouTube, this is not a firearm. Okay, so we're going to pull the trigger, and listen to that. Sealed and tight. Stupid fix. I know. Fortunately, there was another issue, so that was good too. But let's just go ahead and make sure. And out she goes. Just like that, guys. All right, let's go ahead and release the pressure and take out the cartridge. That's all there was to that. Now, this sent me down a rabbit hole because it got me thinking, wait a minute, why would one CO2 cartridge be different than another one? So I started looking at some of the CO2 that we use, guys, and I've got a few different brands here that I want to show you, and a couple things I noticed about these. Now, let me put old Tippmann away here. Now, if you look at these visually, guys, they look identical. There is no physical difference that you can see with the naked eye. Now, if you start to get these up a little closer, and I'm going to give you an example. In fact, that will be one we'll look at in a second. Let's take a look at a Valken, all right? As you can see, it's got a very thin aluminum top on there, and you can see that it's actually differentiated from the lid. You see how that little separation is there? These puncture pretty darn well. Now, when you get into some of the off-brands, and I'll give you a primary example of that. Hang on a second here. I had one that this morning and here's a good example. Special Force, guys. Okay. You know I love Mercury Rise. They are wonderful. I've never had an issue with any of their stuff before. You also know that I am a pretty big fan of Chiappa, who puts out like the LTL Alpha and the Bravo. These are the generic CO2 cartridges that they are using in their launchers. Now, I want you to look at the top, guys. You see how that separation is flat? Sometimes, and if you'll look real close there, you'll see it's actually dented. See that? But it's not punctured. This is one of the CO2 cartridges that we put into a launcher and popped it the first time, and it didn't puncture it. It just dented it. Now, this had nothing to do with the cap. The cap was a brand new cap, sharp and pointy, out of the box. Should never have done this. When I put a Valken into it, it broke the first time. Now, going on here, this is the Umarex brand, and as you can see, good separation. And when you look at the hole, you can see you get a nice clean puncture in there. Now, guys, when you compare these side by side, and I'm going to show you something in a minute that's really going to blow your mind, but when you compare them side by side, what you're actually looking for is how the hole was knocked in and how cleanly it went in, all right? So, and I'll give you a prime example. This is the Valken that we just punctured with that with a Tippmann a second ago. You can see, look how clean that is. A clean puncture all the way through, no little hangy parts, nothing like that. Whereas on some of these, you're going to get the little hangy parts in there. Not a huge problem because the CO2 is going to fill the chamber and you're going to get the same pressure, but a little bit annoying. The weirdest thing about this, and this is something, guys, I cannot explain. Let me show you something. So I'm going to pull out my caliper. Now, when I first did this, guys, I thought this was a joke. Okay, we are zeroed out on our caliper, all right? I am going to test our, let's leave that one for last because these I want to talk to you about in a minute. You won't believe who that is. All right, so let's check our Valken, all right? So we're going to open up our caliper, and we're going to test it from tip to bottom and see what the distance is right there. All right, so we're at 82.5. You guys got that? 82.5. That is on the Valken brand. Now, just for giggles, let's go ahead and we're going to test our Special Forces brand. That has got to be the cheesiest name ever, right? Okay, all right. So let's put this in here, and we're going to test it from tip to bottom. You see any difference? 82.7. Now, just for giggles, let's check our... Now, this is a Umarex branded cartridge, okay, guys? Now, honestly, if you look at that, that's one of the best punctures you'll see. The Umarex punctures perfectly every time, at least on the Umarex launchers. But let's go ahead and check it and see what our distance is on it here. Hang on. 82.3, or 82.9, okay? Different again. So as you can see, every one of these, now this is another one of the Special Forces, but this came out of the LTL Alpha. Hang on a second here. 82.6. Now, guys, a lot of people, somebody's going to try to say, well, that's the little bubble at the top. That is flat. We are measuring a flat surface, okay? That's making that difference. Now, this one is interesting. Guys, you'll notice there's no branding on this, right? But one thing I like, if you look at that tip, look how that's kind of real thin and it's bubbled out and how smooth that is. Anybody want to guess who puts this one out? Byrna. This is a Byrna CO2 cartridge. And guys, it is so easy to puncture. I'm going to give you an example. I just did a mod for a lady for an HDS shotgun. It's actually going out to her tomorrow. The first one that I had put in was actually a Valken CO2 cartridge. And when I hit it, it didn't puncture the first time. That's the dented one you're seeing over here. But then I put this, and I actually pulled it out going, hey, wait a minute, what in the world is going on? Well, what that's going to cause is, and this is something I was thinking about too, a lot of these people that are using these Allen keys to over-tighten the bottom on those caps, this could be a cause of that. If they're securing these down normally, and they're in the correct position, and yet this is 0.3 millimeters short, it's not going to puncture. They're going to hit it, and it's going to feel like the cap needs to go up in further, because it does. So, the key, don't cheap out on this. Now, guys, what I'm going to do is, when I'm done with this video, I'm going to put a link down here to each of the CO2 that I currently trust. One of them you're going to see that I do not put on here is Crossman. During this testing, I had 3 out of 5 of the Crossmans not puncture using an HTP 50. And that really caught me off guard because that thing will puncture anything. Those things are great. So I'm not even going to put Crossman on that list. But anyway, the Byrna ones, guys, I have no idea who makes them for them. I don't know if it's an off-brand, but whatever it is, they're they're just wonderful. They just work, and that's really what counts in a self-defense situation. If you're going to cheap out at all, cheap out on your rounds and practice with the rubber rounds. Don't cheap out on your CO2, because when it comes down to it, you can have the greatest launcher in the world out there firing 500 feet a second and 35 joules, and if this doesn't puncture when you need it, it doesn't matter. So don't cheap out on your CO2 cartridges for sure, guys. Listen, I know this was a short one. I have a big one planned. I had another box come in that I was not expecting, and it's a little bit different than our other launchers, but it's a launcher. So have a great weekend, guys. I know it was a short one, but I wanted to get back in and kind of get back into the swing. CO2 cartridge is going to be listed down below down there, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.